Joe,
Yes, George.
are we going to do another movie from this family? Aren't you sick of Nepo babies? Now we're doing films back to back of these people?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Enter the Dragon. It's a Nepo baby movie.
Who's a Nepo baby and Enter the Dragon?
Are you kidding? The lead. This guy, Bruce Lee.
You're knocking Bruce Lee because his dad was a Chinese opera singer and film actor in Hong Kong? You think that helped Bruce Lee in America? Or is it that his dad's success made it easier for him? Like, actors whose parents are rich, so they don't have to work service jobs between auditions, making it easier for them to devote themselves to their craft.
I don't know about all that. All I know is we just had a Spike Lee movie. Now we're doing a Bruce Lee movie?
Do you think Bruce Lee and Spike Lee are related?
They're not?
No, they're not. Do you know who Bruce Lee is?
He's not Spike Lee's dad?
What? No, don't be ridiculous.
I don't know. Unless something was in an episode of The Office or Letterkenny, I never heard of it.
But how is it possible you don't know who Bruce Lee is?
I thought I did know. I thought he was a member of the Spike Lee family. I thought he was a little Spike Lee joint.
Why? Just because they have the same last name?
Can you think of a better reason?
How is it possible I do a cinema podcast with someone this ignorant about cinema?
I don't know. You're just lucky, I guess.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka. And today we're discussing Enter the Dragon from 1973 and some historical context.
You just blew out everybody's speakers with that sound.
That might have been racist, but it's the movie.
I didn't go, what race are you doing?
That kind of caricature of Asian people in movies, you see a lot of racist white characters when they come across an Asian character, make that sound and then go into some kind of, but Bruce Lee does that all over this movie.
Doesn't pretty much everybody?
And some very interesting faces.
Yes, he has very interesting facial features when he's doing his karate.
Particularly one move that we'll get to.
Yeah, so is that the one where he jumps up in the air and lands on somebody?
That is the one, Joe.
Yeah, I thought that facial feature was very interesting as well.
But first, some podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com on Facebook, Letterboxd, and Counter Social. Please tell your friends about us and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1973.
I promise, ladies and gentlemen, I will be posting more on Letterboxd and Counter Social. I've been kind of falling down on the job there, but I'm going to try and post more. Anyway.
Do we have followers on those?
Well, we're never going to have any if I don't post more, so.
Okay.
But we do have some on Counter Social. I'm not, Letterboxd, yeah.
All right.
Anyway, karate was quite the fad in the 70s as the one-hit wonder Carl Douglas sang, everybody was kung fu fighting. Let's start with information I got from this 1973 article I read in the San Bernardino County Sun. George, what's the headline?
Karate's Rising Tide.
According to this piece, karate was developed by 6th century monks because weapons were denied them. By the way, I know it gets confusing, but karate's origins began in Japan, not China, which is what I always thought. Karate is one specific form of martial art. Kung Fu is the overall study of any discipline of martial arts. Up to 1 million people were paying up to $100 a month to learn karate at thousands of karate schools. Those numbers come from Black Belt Magazine. That's a magazine about Kung Fu, not a periodical dedicated to black people wearing belts.
Yeah, nobody thought that.
Yeah, Black Belt Magazine is still produced to this day out of Oklahoma because when you think martial arts, you think Oklahoma. Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, and we do hi with our karate chop.
We think about martial arts and bump stocks.
Yes. A quick Google search says California has the most karate schools, clubs, and dojos with over 2,600. In 1973, those white outfits worn in karate classes, spelled G-I, pronounced gi, were being bought at triple the rate they were the year before. They took classes because they wanted to kick ass. That's pretty obvious, but the newspaper says it, so I will as well. Now remember, my sources here are from the early 70s, so they use fucked up terms. And it gets really weird when it mentions how karate had been kicking around America at least since, and I'm quoting now, Oshima, a Japanese immigrant, came to the University of Southern California in 1955 for graduate studies in political science. End quote. Oshima, it says. And goes on to quote him and his unhappiness of folks opening up dojos, but the San Bernardino keeps calling him Oshima. This isn't Star Trek. The man's full name is Tosomo Hishima. Its other article pretends he has only one name, like he's Cher or something. And by the way, Wikipedia says he studied economics and not political science. Not that it matters, I guess.
They are kind of related. Yeah.
Maybe. What matters is that this dude is still around. He's in his 90s and runs Shotokan Karate of America in Los Angeles, California. They call themselves the original non-profit organization teaching karate in America since 1956. But let's move on. Enter the Dragon came out in America in August 1973, which means Bruce Lee had been dead for about a month before the film's premiere. He was only 32 when he died of cerebral edema. When the young and famous die unexpectedly, human beings like to make myths around their deaths because that's easier than just accepting life as random and unfair.
I'm one of those people, and I will be inventing a myth about his death in the summary.
Okie dokie. This is why people still need a grand conspiracy around the death of JFK, as opposed to just understanding a random loser shot the guy. And Bruce's death was no different, with guys dreaming up everything from Chinese mafia to a jealous lover. But who was Bruce Lee? Or at least, what were they writing about him in 1973? For that, I refer to the Dayton Daily News. George, read the questionable headline.
Just to be clear, he doesn't mean that it's questionable that this is a headline. It's the language that is questionable in the headline.
Yes.
Oriental invasion. Martial arts symbolized by the late Bruce Lee, latest fad to gain wide popularity in America.
George, do we both agree Oriental in the context of Asian people is straight up racist, right?
Yes, Oriental is fine if you are talking about furniture from an area known as the Orient.
Correct.
People, not so much.
Yes. Now, in this piece, as in many other news articles of the time, martial arts films are referred to as chopsaki pictures. This term was coined by Variety magazine in the 70s after the success of numerous films coming out of Hong Kong depicting kung fu. The word is a play on chop suey, the Chinese-American cuisine. Is the term chopsaki outdated? For sure. Is it racist? I had no idea, and I sure as hell wasn't going to ask whatever few Asian people I know, because they don't exist in life to answer my dumb and potentially offensive questions. Also, I wanted a consensus, not the view of merely one person, so I Googled it. Turns out there is some debate over it, but mainly, yeah, better not to use it than to use it. Leave it in the 70s. Chopsaki does not work. We will see if the same can be said for Enter the Dragon, but right now let's continue with our exploration of 73 with our Dayton Daily News piece. The author says Lee, who stood at 5 foot and 7.5 and weighed 140 pounds, was an action hero superstar, especially in the nation where he shot his films, Hong Kong. This meant, yes, all the cool stuff from being a star, like money and fame, but also the downside of randos challenging him to fights. If you're curious, Bruce Lee's style, at least according to this reporter who interviewed him, was a cross between dance and various fighting styles from Japan, Okinawa, Korea, and China. And he practiced this for 3 to 6 hours a day, which sounds exhausting.
And that style was called Jeet Kune Do.
Yep. About his fame and how it changed his life, Bruce Lee is quoted here as saying, "It's changed in the sense that it is like I'm in jail. I'm like the monkey at the zoo, people looking at me and things like that. And basically, I like a simple life, and I like to joke a lot and all those things, but I cannot speak as freely as I could before. Misinterpretation comes in and all kinds of misunderstandings. It hasn't changed me, basically, because I know that in the process of being born and going to die, something happened which is breaking some records." End quote. Okay, George, tell us about Enter the Dragon.
All right. This was directed by Robert Klaus and written by Michael Allen and uncredited by Bruce Lee himself.
Director's other films I've seen are Game of Death and Black Belt Jones. He was also a writer on the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee Story, a film I've mentioned a few times on this pod. Michael Allen I know from Flash Gordon. I'll wait for later to list what Bruce Lee work I've seen.
As for awards, its only award entry is its 2004 inclusion in the National Film Registry.
Which is interesting.
It's interesting, and I'm okay with it, given what this laid the groundwork for.
Sure.
Blurbs. IMDb says, A Shaolin martial artist travels to an island fortress to spy on an opium lord, who is also a former monk from his temple, under the guise of attending a fighting tournament. Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Amazon, of course. AMC presents. Recruited by an intelligence agency, a martial arts student participates in a brutal tournament in an attempt to gather enough evidence to convict an international drug trafficker of murder.
Okay.
Yeah, other than having to announce AMC presenting it as if that matters.
And not only does it not matter, AMC wasn't around at the time this thing was produced. It's a Warner Brothers picture.
Mm-hmm. Characters. We have Lee. He's calm, cool, and collected, except when he's stomping on someone. Our protagonist was raised as a Shaolin monk and is the temple's finest student. He's played, of course, by Bruce Lee.
I don't know how, other than racism, that this guy could be the sidekick in Green Hornet. His character, Kato, is way cooler and more interesting than Green Hornet. That's true even in the radio show where Green Hornet originated. In the Van Williams series in the 1960s, it's even more obvious who the series should have revolved around. And I did see the Green Hornet series. It sucked. It needed more Bruce Lee. Ironically, that's also true about Lone Ranger and Tonto. Tonto is better than the Lone Ranger. I bring up the Lone Ranger in comparison to the Green Hornet because the same people created the two shows. In the universe of both series, the Lone Ranger is a descendant of the Green Hornet. Meanwhile, besides watching his talent be wasted in the Green Hornet, I also saw Bruce Lee in every film he starred in. That would include Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon, Enter the Dragon, and Game of Death.
Then we have Han. He's the big bad of the film. He's not all that big. And he comes with attachments.
He does.
Played by Keen Shi.
Years and years ago, the Times Square of my youth, there were two types of films that dominated the area: porn and kung fu movies. I was too young for porn. I could always get into kung fu films. There were stereotypes back in the day that black people could not shut up at movies. It was karate pictures that reputation was earned. It wasn't just the martial arts you went to see these movies for. You also went to hear the audience yell shit at the screen, sometimes really funny shit. Also, the films were horribly dubbed. Characters' mouths would move, but they would be out of sync with the audio. This also added to the hilarity. As you would say, George, there is a non-zero chance I saw him in one of those films in Times Square, but I didn't go for the titles or the performers, except Bruce Lee and maybe the ripoff films of Bruce Lee, Lee being spelled L-I. Yes, children, there was a whole bunch of films put out starring Asian actors whose names were changed so they sounded like Bruce Lee. Google Bruceploitation for more on that. So have I seen other Ken Shi films? More than likely. Can I tell you what they were? No, I cannot. This isn't important, but Wikipedia says Shi was not religious but converted to Christianity after being influenced by devout Christian Bruce Lee. I don't know which Bruce Lee they are talking about, but the Bruce Lee that we're speaking of and who stars in this film was an atheist, and very openly so. There's no question about that at all.
Nope. This guy had 288 movie acting credits.
Incredible.
That's not counting the TV ones. So you very well may have seen him in something else.
I almost certainly must have, but I don't know what they were.
The film opens with a fighting exhibition at a Shaolin temple. Lee is facing off against a sparring partner played by Sammo Kambo Hung, today a well-known and respected martial arts actor, director, and producer. Lee grapples his opponent to submission, then somersaults over some delighted students.
He expands an awful lot of energy that I think would be better used on the mat rather than just like, hey, look at this, I can do this. He does that throughout the movie.
He won the match. He had the energy left over.
I guess.
He didn't have to expend it there. He meets his teacher on a garden path. The abbot tells him that his training has progressed past the physical and into the spiritual.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, he quizzes his student on the tenets of their philosophy. Bruce Lee's expression of this is reflective of his personal philosophy. As he once said, be formless, shapeless, like water.
Like, how do you do that?
It's a mindset.
Uh-huh. And how do you do that?
It's a mindset of being adaptable to the circumstances as they change. That's all. But I do have to take issue with it because water does have a shape. It takes the shape of its container.
Indeed.
Then the abbot tells him about Han, a former student of the temple who has gone on to corrupt the teachings and leverage his skill into a position of power for his own gain. It falls to Lee to restore honor to the temple. He's told to go meet with someone for further information. That man is Braithwaite. He's a British law enforcement type. Let's take a moment to remember that, at the time, Hong Kong was occupied by the British, which is why a Chinese martial artist would be recruited by and work for them. He's played by Jeffrey Weeks, and I was sure I'd find something else to have seen him in, but this is his only credited role, and he died in 1974. Over tea, the Brit tells Lee about a fighting tournament organized by Han. That conversation is interrupted by the arrival of another student, Lau, who is there for a lesson from Lee. Lee tells the kid to kick him. When the student seems angry, Lee chides him for it and instructs him that he should be using his emotional strength, but not necessarily the emotional identity in his strikes. He calls this emotional content. Finally, he reminds the student to never take his eyes off his opponent, even when bowing.
I'm sorry, he comes off as a real dick there. It really annoyed me.
It might have annoyed you, but the student was more than happy to have had that lesson.
I didn't get the impression he was happy at all. I think he was pissed. Well, he tells him that he's, don't be angry. Like, well, you're like hitting me and like insulting me. That makes me angry. I don't think the Bruce Lee in this film had very good teaching style. I'm sorry.
Now we're almost 9 minutes into the movie. Obviously, it's time for the opening credits. This is with a montage of 2 other tournament attendees arriving in Hong Kong. I'll introduce them in a bit. In a darkened room, Braithwaite is showing Lee file footage of Han and his associates. One of them is O'Hara. O'Hara is Han's right-hand man, who looks like he could have been a 70s folk singer if only he hadn't turned to evil. He is played by Robert Wall.
He was in Game of Death, The Way of the Dragon, and Black Belt Jones. In other words, if he was in either a Bruce Lee movie or a Jim Kelly film, then I've seen him.
I probably saw him in Sidekicks, which is a Chuck Norris film.
Okay.
He is right now in pre-production for something called Cowboys from Hell, with a character named Bastard Bob O'Hara, which I can only assume is an homage to his role in this movie.
Perhaps, yeah, maybe.
Girls' bodies are washing up on the shore, and they're pretty sure Han is the culprit. They can't prove it, though. The autopsies come back as heroin overdose as the cause of death.
Think about that for a second. There are bodies washing up on shore. That enough is at least to bring an investigation on the island.
Good point, Joe.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And as this movie goes along, a lot of it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
What's more, Han's compound is on an island of uncertain nationality, so nobody's police forces apparently have jurisdiction to investigate. Then they get down to the details.
We'll give you anything you need. Electronic equipment, weapons, anything. Drink?
No thanks.
Guns.
Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it?
No guns.
Lee looks irritated at that, and it's not just the character. Bruce Lee wanted his character to use a gun at least once, and the idea was shot down.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I thought that it was Lee's idea to not have guns, so he wanted... Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. I'm this heroin drug lord. I have this island, and I've got people under me who some people are held against their will. I have no weapons? Not even a bow and arrow?
And that was the only scene in the movie that wasn't ADR'd. Braithwaite assures Lee that he won't be alone on the island. Mei Ling, his other operative, is already undercover. She is played by Betty Chung.
As far as I know, this is the only movie I've seen this woman from. By the way, going back to the whole thing about the weapons, how easy would it be to smuggle a weapon on that island? I mean, freaking John Saxon, I don't know if you mentioned it later, comes in with a ton of luggage. There could be guns in every one of those bags. They never search him. Hell, you could come in with a weapon on you. You're not searched.
Yeah, but we can also take for granted that they might search them. Like, they don't necessarily have to show that.
Yeah, but the point is that we know that they're not. I mean, all right, well, anyway, I just like, it just seemed kind of stupid. I don't believe in any weapons, and yet no attempt is used to check anybody.
There are nunchucks on the island.
That's true.
As if it wasn't enough to be going after Han for dissing the temple and for being a drug-pushing murderer of women, the abbot tells Lee that O'Hara, and by extension Han, are responsible for what happened to his sister, Su Lin, who is billed as a guest star.
I didn't know movies could have guest stars.
And we see a flashback to her holding her own against a bunch of Han's thugs, including O'Hara. And she takes her own life via harikari with a shard of a broken window rather than be raped by them. She's played by Angela Mao.
Considering she's Asian and O'Hara is white, this may seem to be an odd comparison, but maybe it was intentional by the filmmakers. I can think of only 2 other films where a woman kills herself rather than be sexually assaulted, and both times the woman is white. That would be Birth of a Nation and the equally racist Nazi movie Sus the Jew. As to the actress, Angela Mao, don't know if I've ever seen her in other stuff or not.
Okay then.
The whole thing with the sister, what was Bruce Lee's character told before? What did he think happened to her?
Good question, Joe.
What are they telling him? And why tell him now? Why wait all this time to finally tell him?
Oh, because you need 3 reasons to go after a baddie, Joe. On his way to the tournament, Lee stops by the graves of his sister and mother to pay his respects. And he says that his mom wouldn't approve of him going after Han. Why? Did she have a soft spot for temple disrespecting chemically homicidal rape enablers?
What I found really funny about that scene, he is at the graveyard talking to his sister and his mother, and then he turns and he walks through the graveyard over other people's graves. I just hear him going, ouch, ouch, hey, watch where you're walking. I was like, dude, could you just get off that path and stop? Don't literally walk through the graves. He's walking on over people's graves. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. So those 2 attendees from earlier are also on their way to Han's Island, and we get flashbacks to their backstories. First is Roper as he golfs himself into a sand trap of gambling debt. He's an accomplished fighter. He's also a gambling-addicted, debt-buried, easily distracted Vietnam veteran, and a horn dog. Played by John Saxon.
The scene where John Saxon has Anna Capri walk on his back did a lot to help me achieve puberty. I remembered it actually being an Asian woman and not a white lady, but regardless, that scene and the one right after it with the naked women gave me all sorts of dreams I didn't understand until I was much older.
And Joe felt a need to message that to me.
I hadn't seen it in years. I was like, whoa, I remember this. Hubba hubba. Anyway, John Saxon, his most famous film credit, even more than this picture or Nightmare on Elm Street, is A Star is Born. I say that because A Star is Born has been remade several times, most recently in 2018. He played an uncredited usher in it, but he was in it. Beyond that, I only know his TV work, which include Murder, She Wrote, Bionic Woman, $6 Million Man, and Starsky and Hutch.
And I saw him in The Last Samurai, and he could be Bruce Campbell's long-lost brother.
They still sort of look alike. What was The Last Samurai about?
That's where Tom Cruise is the last samurai.
Oh, okay. Oh, God, Jesus. All right.
Yeah. Then we meet Williams. He's black. You can tell from the fro. He can kick ass all day and then bang all night with as many sex slaves as one can provide him.
I don't know if anybody's ever done a documentary or a book on black people, let's face it, black men of my generation seeing karate movies, but boy did we. And we love Jim Kelly. I saw him in Black Belt Jones, 3 the Hard Way, Take a Hard Ride, Hot Potato, and Black Samurai. That is the movie with a samurai who's not Tom Cruise.
But is also probably not Japanese.
Oh. So in the end, it doesn't make any sense. But he's an undercover agent who they call the Black Samurai for some reason.
Williams' backstory shows him getting harassed by cops on his way to the airport. He kicks their asses and steals their car. I liked that.
That was very funny. And I remember very vague. I mean, I don't remember how old I was when I first saw this film. I had to be pretty young. But I do vaguely remember the crowd going bananas. That scene. Especially when he takes the car.
He takes the car and turns the lights and siren on. Like, that's just, chef's kiss of trolling him. It turns out that Williams and Roper know each other. They're old army buddies who served together in Vietnam. They've heard rumors that Han likes to live big. Williams contrasts that with what he sees in the people around them.
They don't live so big over there. Ghettos are the same all over the world. They stink.
Basically, Williams would be accused of being a social justice warrior nowadays.
He's woke.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, him just saying that means the movie's woke. Mm-hmm. Conservatives everywhere would be walking out in a huff.
On the boat, the crew bet on praying mantis fights. Which, when they got the praying mantises, they wouldn't, like the first ones, they wouldn't fight.
Sure, why would they fight?
Roper can't help but get in on the action and, of course, lose. Another contestant tries to goad Lee into a fight. Lee tricks him into getting onto a lifeboat and then sets him up to be towed the rest of the way as a lesson in how to win a fight without throwing a punch.
That is such a dumb scene. Because, oh yeah.
I loved it anyway.
He's like, let me get on this boat, because I'm sure you won't let it go at all and send me out to sea.
The other lesson in that is don't trust strangers. The attendees are met on the island by more of Han's employees, two of which are worth mentioning. First is Tanya. She is in charge of administration for Han's brothel of sex slaves, played by Anna Capri.
Beyond this picture, I don't know her film work. I probably saw her guest appearances in TV shows I watched at the time, so I might have seen her in Kojak, Beretta, Cannon, or maybe Police Story. Maybe I saw her in all of them, I can't remember. All I know is I really, really enjoyed seeing her wear that shirt and walk on John Saxon's back.
And I can understand that. Then there is Bolo, the only person in this film who elicited from me an, "Oh, it's that guy!" Before the film was over, I'd form a tentative hypothesis about his career. The character is what I assume he is in anything this actor's been in, of which I can only recall one, Bloodsport. He's a bad guy, an enforcer, and a sadist. Played by Bolo Young.
I saw him in Game of Death for sure. I might have seen him in a Bruce Lee movie, where Lee is spelled L-I, but I'm not sure.
He was one of the real Bruce Lee's students.
Yes, that's true.
On the way in, they are brought past a number of fields full of white-gied students practicing their martial arts. The sounds reminded me of the Hut Huts from Blues Brothers. In the evening, there is a banquet. It is a busy banquet, full of food and full of entertainments in the forms of sumo wrestlers and acrobats.
The sumo wrestler thing was just straight up weird. They're not even fighting, right? They're just sort of bouncing against each other. What I know, that's sort of sumo wrestling, but what do they do? I'm just like, why are we here in the middle of this and no one's even paying attention to it? It was stupid.
What got me about that was what I learned about it afterwards. Sumo wrestling is a Japanese thing.
Yes.
They flew them in from Japan, and those were the biggest sumo wrestlers they could find. They were not big. Like, my exposure to and idea of sumo wrestling came from Street Fighter video games, where you had E. Honda, this massive motherfucker. They're not. They're really not that big.
They also just played no factor in the plot. There's no reason for them to even be there.
Nope, they're entertainment. Roper reinforces his gambling addiction with Lee, and Williams expresses his lack of appetite since the food is mostly live shellfish. Han himself comes out to greet his guests.
Gentlemen, welcome. You honor our island. I look forward to a tournament of truly epic proportions. We are unique, gentlemen, in that we create ourselves. Through long years of rigorous training, sacrifice, denial, pain, we forge our bodies in the fire of our will. But tonight, let us celebrate. Gentlemen, you have our gratitude.
I hate to say it, but a lot of the ADR in this film sounds like badly edited podcasts.
Well, the sound quality was really bad in those films. That was the whole part of the charm of them.
Han is surrounded by women. He throws fruit up into the air, and the ladies pierce that fruit with a variety of thrown weapons pulled from their hair. One of those women is Mei Ling, who spears an orange with a thrown dagger that lands in Lee's hands.
Wait a minute, that's right. They have those. Why, when he's fighting all those guys, how come no one throws a dagger at him?
Good question, Joe. After the feast, the contestants are settled into their rooms. Tanya visits each, offering a buffet of sex slaves to choose from. Williams chooses half a dozen. Lee asks for the one who threw the blade that pierced the fruit he caught. Roper chooses Tanya. Mei Ling tells Lee that the girls disappear after Han summons them, and it happens to every girl, and that soon it's going to be her turn.
I mean, obviously there's a lot wrong with the whole sex slave thing. I mean, because these aren't sex workers, they're as near as we can tell, they're doing this against their will. So that's obviously, so I don't know, how do I put this? Well, I guess in the case of Roper, Tanya definitely wants to be doing this.
Yeah.
But with William, I hate to use the term, is this rape? I mean, what is that?
Good question, Joe. I don't have an answer for you, but good question. That's a question they should have asked in 1973 before they put this out. The morning is a cacophony of students hutting their morning practice. Han arrives to let the games begin. We see the jackass that Lee left floating get his ass kicked by Williams. Then Williams plays a local for a fool, betting on Roper, as Roper fakes a lack of skill to get the odds up until it's high enough to be worth ending the match.
That scene is, well, somewhat amusing. They were not subtle at all. I think the guy would notice he was being set up here, because, I mean, he's literally looking over him. Now? No, not now. How about now? He's kicked me again. Nope. Keep going, man. Guys, a little subtlety would be nice.
That night, Tanya is walking on Roper's back, and Joe gets excited.
It was very erotic.
Then we see Williams disappointing some naked sex slaves by not fucking them anymore, so that he can go outside and do some solo karate. He's warned not to, but he does anyway. Lee also goes for a moonlight stroll of a different sort. The secret agent sneaking around investigating sort. What he finds is some kind of industrial setup underground that turns out to be the power plant for the island.
Which none of that is illegal, so I don't even know.
Well, what he sees at that moment isn't illegal, but there are definitely illegal things happening in the rest of that underground compound.
Yeah, true. But the way it's shot, it seemed like, oh, he's really caught onto something. I'm like, no, none of this is a crime. It's meaningless.
The next morning, Han is upset at his guards' incompetence and pits them against Bolo, who gets his sadistic jollies by murdering them.
Yeah, because when Lee goes out, he keeps running to guards and he beats the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And for some reason, even though Lee is not wearing a mask, they aren't able to identify him as the person who was out that night.
Then Lee is pit against O'Hara. The thug brings a board with him to break in front of Lee as an intimidation move. Lee responds with a great line.
Boards don't hit back.
Lee beats O'Hara easily. The thug keeps attacking even after the match is over. Eventually, Lee stomps O'Hara to death. When we see him make that face and sound for the first time where he looks like he just shit his pants and then just returns to normal. Like, nope, I did not shit my pants, and if I did, I am fine with it.
By the way, he was here on a spying mission. They didn't give, he's not James Bond. He doesn't have a license to kill. As
the crowd disperses, Roper and Williams set a meeting for themselves, and then Williams is called to Han's study. Han suspects Williams to be the one that was sneaking around the night before. Williams doesn't appreciate the implication and asks to leave the island. Han responds by killing him. Turns out, Han has some tricks up his sleeve, so to speak.
And also the fact that his name is Han, as in hand, is also a bit too on the nose.
You know that Han is just a name in China, right?
No, I understand, but you don't think they named him Han, the character, they named Han because he's got the hand thing?
No, I don't.
Really? Okay. I think that's completely what they had in mind. Because they could have named him a dozen other things. Why Han?
Because it's easy to say.
Other easy Asian names to say. I mean, like you take Bruce Lee's name and just re-letter it like L-I or L-E-E-E-E.
Then Han meets with Roper, not so much to accuse him of anything, but to try recruiting him into his criminal enterprise. He did, after all, just watch his right-hand man get stomped to death, and Bolo is probably too much of a sadistic homicidal maniac to take O'Hara's place.
Sparta, Rome, the knights of Europe, the samurai. They worship strength because it is strength that makes all other values possible. Nothing survives without it. Who knows what delicate wonders have died out of the world for want of the strength to survive?
Han puts a cat on a guillotine as a test of ruthlessness, finding Roper to be a bit more kind and gentle than he'd prefer. The trigger rope for the beheading machine activates a platform, taking them into the industrial area that Lee found the day before. Then Han introduces Roper to a room full of his own daughters, all trained as bodyguards.
That doesn't do him any bit of good at all. Why is that even there?
Good question, Joe. Then Han gets to the point. This is an opium enterprise.
We are investing in corruption, Mr. Roper. The business of corruption is like any other.
Oh, yeah. Provide your customers with products they need and encourage that need a little bit to stimulate your market. And pretty soon your customers will come to depend on you. I mean, really need you. It's the law of economics.
Right. And here we are stimulating quite another need.
That other need are women in observation cells being injected against their will with opiates. I don't know what the business purpose of that would be.
Yeah, that good observation, George.
He pitches that Roper become the U.S. representative for whatever evil incorporated Han is running. Then he shows Roper what happens to people who don't play along when he shows him William's body, bloody and chained, hanging above a pool of acid, I guess, until it's dropped in. Roper is outraged but doesn't push back too hard, given that he knows what the stakes are now.
What is that for? Why would he have this whole big thing of acid? Just in case he wanted to kill somebody and show him off?
Or dispose of the body.
He puts the bodies in the river, doesn't he? I mean, that's where those women go.
That might not be a pool of acid. That might just go to the waterway. I don't know.
It's just a pool of water there that they use to... What would that be there for?
Good question, Joe. As far as layers go, it doesn't make much sense. Lee spends the night infiltrating Han's operation and beating the ever-living shit out of an army of extras. One of those extras is Jackie Chan.
Oh, wow.
Bruce Lee accidentally hit him in the face with one of the sticks.
Oh.
And then, was so sorry, he was like, I promise you can be in all of my future movies, but died before he can make that happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, there were no future movies. But fortunately, Jackie Chan's made his own.
Yep. And if the summary feels short, it's because of scenes like this, which is 4 scenes worth of the scene list. It's Bruce Lee being Bruce Lee in a movie. There's a snake involved. Lee manages to get a radio message off to Braithwaite. Then he gets boxed into a cave where he sits down to meditate like Qui-Gon did right before Darth Maul killed him. Or like I did a few years ago when I got stuck in an elevator. Han monologues to him to congratulate him on a magnificent battle.
The choreography I liked of these fight scenes, and as a kid, I thought they were spectacular. As an adult watching these things, I'm going, okay, there's a crowd of dudes are coming at him, and yet they all wait for their ass to be kicked before the other one moves in. It's like it's one at a time. It's like they might as well have been standing in a line, one behind the other. Again, let me kick your ass. Let me kick your ass. Let me kick your ass. No one, they don't act as a team or a group to just jump on Bruce Lee. They just let him beat the one up, and then okay, now I'll jump in.
Like he takes the nunchucks from one guy, does a whole big thing with the nunchucks. The guy is standing there holding his arm like, ow, you hurt my arm when you stole my nunchucks. And then the guy picks up a stick and goes after Lee. Like, what the fuck are you? Do you not see him with the nunchucks? He's gonna beat the shit out of you if you get anywhere near him. Come on, use your fucking eyes.
The whole fight just makes no sense.
But still, it's fantastic to watch.
It's terrifically done.
A half hour after Lee sends the radio message, Braithwaite gets it and orders that help be sent, even if they have to wake someone up to send it, and even if that someone is with someone else.
I didn't know what that was all about, other than maybe get a laugh out of the audience.
In the morning, Han tries to force Roper to fight Lee, but Roper doesn't want to, and how the fuck are you going to make him? So he pits Roper against Bolo. No betting this time, so Roper is on his game the whole time. A little less so at the beginning, though, and he gets put into a submission hold. So he does what Bruce Lee himself said he would do in that situation. He bites Bolo's leg. This more or less turns the tide. Meanwhile, Mei Ling is busy freeing a big old cage full of formerly drunk townsfolk that Han's forces kidnapped.
For what?
Good question, Joe. Above ground, Roper finishes Bolo with an ancient and trusted technique, a kick in the balls. This led me to hypothesize that in any film I see Bolo in, he is more than likely getting his ass kicked by a white dude. This movie and Bloodsport are my 2 data points for that.
Maybe that's in his contract.
Maybe.
I must be beaten up by a white man.
Han starts sending waves of students by name. Jimmy, Joe, Ted, go. Bob, Curly, Larry, go.
Yeah, it never occurs to them to just do it themselves. They need to be instructed by the boss.
Then the prisoners arrive, and the entire place becomes a massive brawl. Han decides to cut and run and is pursued by Lee. Han reveals that he's got a prosthetic bladed hand, or fuzzy mitten as it became known when it became the hottest selling toy of the year.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Lee takes some slashing damage from that, and from a bigger, bladier version that Han upgrades to inside the compound. Lee avoids a spear throw, and the spear pierces a wall right through a spinning panel that leads to a ridiculously impractical hall of mirrors.
And by the way, so he has spears? Give that to your guards. You don't like guns? What about that? How about spears?
The reflections mess with Lee for a bit until he remembers his master teaching him to destroy the illusions of the enemy. So he breaks a bunch of mirrors, incurring so much bad luck in the process that it literally kills the actor, but allows the character to kick Han onto the spear he'd thrown earlier, killing him. And there's my hypothesis on how Bruce Lee died.
Okay. That scene is a complete ripoff of a 1947 film called The Lady from Shanghai. It was an Orson Welles film. Yes, Orson Welles is not Asian. No one in the film is Asian. It's a film de war, and about this wicked woman and her wicked ways. I don't know why it's called The Lady from Shanghai. I've not actually seen it. I really should watch it sometime. But there is a scene in which there's a shootout in a hole of mirrors, and the man and the woman are shooting at each other, and they're trying to kill each other, and they just keep hitting the mirrors until the bullets finally hit each other.
Alrighty.
It's a fascinating scene. It's actually pretty well done.
It's a plot device used in a lot of films, but
it started in 1947.
Yeah.
I think that's the first film to do it.
In the aftermath, former prisoners mill about, and Tanya lay dead on the ground for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, who killed her?
Yeah, for what?
The only one using weapons was Han, and she was fine when he ran. Who took the time to beat the life out of that woman?
It doesn't make any sense.
As the helicopters arrive, Roper and Lee exchange knowing looks and a thumbs up. The end.
That is such an abrupt ending. Just like, hey, I got thumbs up. Hey, yeah, good job. All right, George, does this still work?
God, no. It was delightful. I fucking loved it. It does not work today. The whole thing about Asian movie stereotypes being the stereotypes that they are because of movies like this. And we don't need to be reinforcing those stereotypes because movies from that region of the world have gotten better over time.
Oh, much better. Yes.
Don't get me wrong, it's an important movie and it laid the groundwork for a lot of what came after it. But this one itself, it's full of plot holes. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. The characters, even the heroes, are kind of at times. No, it doesn't work.
And then we got that whole big problem of what those women are.
Yeah.
Because, that's a real, it's something, back in 1970, I didn't see the picture in 1973, I saw it later, but still, when I was a kid and I saw it, didn't even occur to me would be an issue. But, and as an adult, I'm looking at this thing and like, well, wait a minute, what exactly is their status?
Yeah.
Because if they're not consenting, that makes this film much darker than I remembered.
Like, are they being compensated in any way? Because there's nothing wrong with sex work.
No.
Oh, it's only sex work if you're getting paid for it. Like, did they volunteer? Like, yeah, I'll go fuck some dudes for you. We need to know that because historically, situations that looked like that were the bad one.
Yes, and we know that he kills these women also.
Yeah.
Because he puts them full of heroin for some reason. Or opium, whatever he's giving them.
That's how he gets off.
Yeah, that's how he gets off. I agree with you. It doesn't work. The sound is bad. The story has a lot of holes. And like I said, the whole thing with the women is not good. The whole thing with his sister doesn't make any sense. Like, why have that in there? Why turn it into a revenge picture? Maybe it's just the American in me. I could not get past the fact that there were no guns. It just seemed like...
That is definitely the American in you, Joe.
How can you have an island where you're running an empire, you're Mr. Evil, and you have no firearms? It's just like, it was too distracting. And again, Bruce Lee choreographed the shit out of this. It's very well done, but in the end, it is a man kicking and hitting people who are waiting to be hit and kicked. I mean, it's literally, you can see it. The guys are standing there waiting for their turn to go at him, as opposed to them all rushing him, so it doesn't make any sense. So no, it's a 1973 picture and it belongs in 1973.
Yeah, but definitely still enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's some enjoyable bits to it. Hey, you can enjoy problematic things. It's It's just the way we are as human beings. George, what's up next?
Next week, we will be talking about My Beautiful Laundrette from 1985.
Are you familiar with this film at all?
Not really, but I know a little bit about it just because I absorbed it when I was checking to make sure it was streaming.
Okay.
And I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's because it's from 1985 and it's about what it's about. I'm interested to see how it works.
I have seen this film, and I'm still interested to see how it works because I haven't seen it since that time. That one time I saw it in the theaters.
If you're listening to this but aren't jazzed about hearing that, I'll try and set the scene for you. The movie is about Pakistani?
I believe it's Pakistani.
Yeah, a Pakistani gay couple opening a laundromat.
Well, no, they're not. It's not a couple.
Oh.
One guy's Pakistani. The other is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Ah.
Daniel Day-Lewis is the other part of the couple. It's the Pakistani guy may be famous as well, but I don't know his name.
They are a gay couple, right?
They are a gay couple.
Okay.
I remember.
Okay, look, 1985 gay couple tries to open a laundromat.
In England. This is a gay picture.
In England, even. Like, all of that, it's like, I actually wouldn't bat an eyelash to see that plot line on something now. But 1985, that interests me.
Now, if I remember the film correctly, they're closeted. So everyone isn't supposed to know that they're gay. I remember when I saw this on the campus of Syracuse University. I was a student at the time. And I remember a guy saying to me, wow, this is such an interesting film because these guys don't even come off as gay. Which is like, I mean, at the time I thought nothing of it, but looking back, I guess that's something of a homophobic comment, really. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, they're not sashaying around.
Yeah, they're not flamboyant.
Yeah, so, yeah, who couldn't tell that they're gay? So, anyway, it was 1985. Let's see how it holds up.
Alrighty.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romaka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
Man, you come right out of a comic book.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
He was one of Bruce Lee, Lee, Ziz. He was one of the real Bruce Lee's students.
Yes, that's true. So, George, I'm going to ask you, as a father,
okay,
why are there more mom online groups and meetups than there are dad groups?
What is your most watched movie?
George, why do some people sit next to you in an empty movie theater or pee next to you when there are empty urinals to use, but don't seem to do that on the subway or the bus, or at least in my occasion?
Other than babies and trash bags. Who always makes you laugh?
George, is happiness just the product of chemical reactions in the brain?